The loneliness was the worst part. It was a constant ache. After 4 months of this soul-crushing grind, I had saved just enough to get out of my car and rent a room in a shared house at the edge of the city. It was a tiny damp space with a window that looked out onto a brick wall. But it had a door that locked and a bed that wasn't a car seat. It felt like a palace. That room became my sanctuary. And it was there that the shame started to curdle into something else, a cold, hard anger. I made a vow to myself, whispered to that brick wall. I would rebuild. Not for revenge, not to show her, but for me. Because the alternative was to let her be right about me. With a fixed address, I started applying for jobs in my actual field again. I lied on my resume to cover the gap. I told interviewers I'd moved for a family reason that was now resolved. Each lie felt like swallowing glass, but it was necessary. Finally, I got a break. A junior logistics associate. It was 2 steps down from my old job and paid a fraction of what I used to make. But it was a salaried position with benefits. It was a lifeline. Life found a new, quiet rhythm. Work, cheap groceries, my small room. I started using my evenings to rebuild my mind. I read books on economics and business. I started running again in the pre-dawn streets, reclaiming myself piece by piece. One evening, I was cleaning out my email when a headline from an old tech newsletter caught my eye. Project Chimera, the acquisition that shook the blockchain world. Chimera. That was it. That was the name of that ridiculous little project I'd thrown a couple grand at years ago. For some reason, I clicked it. Morbid curiosity, I guess. The article explained how this obscure project had been quietly developing a revolutionary new protocol and had just been bought by a tech giant in a multi-billion-dollar deal. It said that early-stage investors were seeing astronomical returns. A dry laugh escaped my lips. Good for them, I muttered. It felt like reading about someone winning the lottery on another planet, but a tiny spark wouldn't go out. I remember setting up a digital wallet. I remember writing down a long, nonsensical seed phrase on a piece of paper and tucking it into a book. I had no idea if I still had it. For the next 2 hours, I tore my small room apart, going through old boxes from storage, and then I found it. Tucked inside a worn copy of The Great Gatsby was a folded piece of paper with 12 random words written on it. My heart started hammering. This was insane. I went to the Project Chimera website. My hands were trembling as I typed in the 12 words. An error message popped up. Authentication failed. Of course it failed. I slumped in my chair, but I looked at the paper again. The 4th word, was it river or risen? My handwriting was a mess. I tried again, typing risen. I hit enter. The page loaded. It showed a balance in Chimera tokens. It was a big number, but meaningless. Then I saw a small button. Display in USD. I hesitated. This was it. I took a deep breath and clicked. The number that popped up on the screen didn't make any sense. It was a long string of digits with 2 commas. I stared. I refreshed the page. The number was still there. I refreshed it again and again. The $2,000 I'd invested on a whim and completely forgotten about had, through some combination of dumb luck and a tech revolution, become just over $4.5 million. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I sat there in my small, damp room staring at the screen, and I just started to laugh. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It was a real, deep, gut-wrenching laugh. The laugh of a man who had been to hell and back, only to find a misplaced key to heaven in his pocket the entire time. It was the sound of cosmic absurdity. It was the sound of freedom. The first thing I did was nothing. For 3 whole days I went to my junior logistics job. I sat in my cubicle and filed my reports, but everything was different. The world had shifted. The fluorescent lights seemed brighter. I was looking at my old life through the window of my new one. The quiet desperation of my colleagues, the petty office drama. It suddenly felt like I was watching a play, and I wasn't in it anymore. The hardship of the past year had been a brutal teacher. My first impulse wasn't to buy a sports car, it was to protect this. I spent hours reading about wealth management and capital gains. I was no longer the fool who poured his life savings into a joint account based on a promise. I hired a team, a seasoned financial advisor and a sharp lawyer. They listened to my story without judgment and helped me liquidate a portion of the crypto, setting up a diversified portfolio and a trust. The numbers on a screen became real security in a bank account under my name and my name alone. A week later, I walked into my office for the last time. I left a polite resignation letter on my manager's desk, walked out, and never looked back. I packed my few belongings and checked into the nicest hotel in the city. From my suite overlooking the skyline that had been my personal hell, I felt a quiet sense of victory. I was leaving on my own terms. I moved back to my old hometown, not to retreat, but to renew. I bought a modest but beautiful house. The first thing I bought for it was a solid oak desk for my new home office. My forgotten investment was in tech, and I decided my future would be too. I reclaimed the passion I'd abandoned for Isabella. I started a small tech consulting firm, helping traditional businesses integrate new technologies. I was my own boss, my own investor, my own partner. The business grew and the work was invigorating. About 2 years later, I had to attend a tech conference back in the city I'd fled. My company was a sponsor. As I stood at our booth, I smelled a familiar perfume. "Liam, is that really you?" I turned. It was Isabella. She was still beautiful, but there was a hardness around her eyes. Her smile seemed more practiced. "Hey, Isabella, hello," I said, my voice neutral. Her eyes swept over me, my suit, the name of my company on the banner behind me. A slow, calculating smile spread across her face. "Wow," she said, dropping her voice to that conspiratorial whisper I remembered. "Look at you. I always knew you had it in you. You just needed a push." The sheer audacity was breathtaking. She was trying to take credit for the life she had tried to destroy. "What are you doing here?" I asked evenly. "Oh, you know," she sighed dramatically. "The art world is so fickle. Richard and I, well, that's a long story. Let's just say his vision wasn't as grand as his wallet." She looked at me, her eyes full of fake warmth. "I've been thinking about us. We were so good together, weren't we? So much passion." She was fishing, using the same old playbook. The old Liam would have felt a surge of anger, but I wasn't the old Liam. Her betrayal had been a crucible, and the man who emerged was calmer and stronger. I realized in that moment I felt nothing for her. Not love, not hate, just indifference. My happiness was built in her absence, on a foundation she could never touch. I gave her a small, quiet smile. "I wish you the best, Isabella," I said, and I meant it. Her fate was no longer tied to mine. Her face fell. She was expecting a reaction, anger, anything but this calm dismissal. "But, Liam," she started, reaching for my arm. I took a small step back. "I have to get back to this," I said, gesturing to a client who was waiting. "It was interesting seeing you." And I turned my back on her. Not with anger, but with purpose. I turned back to my life. It was the most powerful closure I could have imagined. My peace was all the proof I needed. My company thrived, and eventually I met someone, an architect named Sarah. With her it wasn't a whirlwind, it was a slow build, something real, based on respect and shared values. My wealth was just a fact of my life, not the definition of it. Sometimes late at night, I think about that man with the broken heart in front of a slammed door. I feel a sense of pity for him, but also gratitude. He had to be broken so I could be rebuilt. Isabella's betrayal, as cruel as it was, had been an unintentional gift. It forced me into the wilderness, and it was there that I was forced to find my own strength. She took my money, but she gave me back myself, and that's a fortune no amount of money can buy. Liam's journey from total ruin to incredible success teaches a powerful lesson. Our lowest moments are often where our greatest strengths begin to grow. His story isn't just about a lucky investment. It's about the ultimate investment we all have to make, in ourselves. He learned that real wealth isn't your bank balance, but your resilience and the self-respect you refuse to give up. His triumph wasn't becoming a millionaire. It was taking his own destiny back. His story proves that sometimes the things that break us are just creating the cracks that let the light in. The end of one dream, no matter how painful, can be the start of a truer one. It's a reminder that your value is never determined by someone else's inability to see it. So we have to ask, what would you have done in Liam's situation? When he met Isabella again, would you have confronted her or just walked away? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone, and if this story resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more incredible tales of life, loss, and the unexpected turns that make us who we are. Thanks for watching. The door slammed shut. The sound echoed in the apartment, which suddenly felt huge and empty. It was the sound of finality, the end of a chapter I was foolish enough to believe was a forever story. Just like that, everything I'd sacrificed for love was gone. I had quit my job, a career I'd spent 10 years building. I had drained my savings, every single dollar, pouring it into a future that turned out to be a complete illusion. And now, I was standing in the middle of a room that wasn't mine anymore, with nothing but a broken heart, an eviction notice on the counter, and the bitter taste of betrayal in my mouth. I was a fool in my own story. The world I built, the man I thought I was, had been taken apart in less than 10 minutes. Staring at that closed door, the only question my brain could form wasn't why, but what now? How do you rebuild your life from ashes when you're the one who handed over the matches? Before Isabella, my life was predictable but in a comfortable way. My name is Liam, and my world was all about neat margins and knowing what was coming next. I was a senior logistics coordinator for a manufacturing firm. It wasn't a job that would change the world, but it was a world I understood. I was good at it. I actually found satisfaction in the complex dance of supply chains and delivery schedules, in making order out of chaos. It paid the bills, funded a modest 401k, and let me live in a clean, if a little sparse, one-bedroom apartment. My life was like a calm river, flowing along a course I knew by heart. My evenings were spent either at the gym, going through the motions, or diving into my quiet passion, tinkering with small tech projects. Years ago, I'd taken a small bonus and, on a whim, invested a couple of $1,000s into a friend of a friend's weird digital ledger project. It was a long shot, something he called a cryptocurrency, and I honestly forgot about it almost as soon as the money was gone. It was a lottery ticket I never expected to cash. My friends would describe me as dependable, solid, maybe even a little boring, and part of me was starting to worry they were right. I was stable, but I was also stagnant. There was this quiet loneliness humming just beneath the surface of my orderly life, a desire for something more. And then Isabella crashed into my life like a beautiful, unpredictable tidal wave. We met at a local art fair I'd only gone to because a colleague was showing off his pottery. I was browsing, feeling completely out of place, when I heard a laugh. It was this full, loud sound that just cut through the polite murmur of the crowd. I turned and saw her. She was passionately arguing with a vendor about brushstrokes. She had fiery red hair that seemed to catch all the light in the room, and eyes that sparkled with an intensity that was both intimidating and magnetic. She caught me staring, and instead of looking away, she smiled, a huge, generous smile that made me feel like I was the only person there. "He thinks cubism was a fluke," she said, nodding toward the vendor. "Can you believe it?" I knew nothing about art, but I found myself nodding along, totally captivated. Her name was Isabella. She was an art history grad with dreams as big and colorful as the paintings she loved. Our romance was a whirlwind. She was everything I wasn't, spontaneous, daring, and wonderfully impulsive. She taught me to see the world not as a list of problems to solve, but as a masterpiece to experience. We had late-night dinners in hole-in-the-wall places she swore were the most authentic. We took random road trips to towns with funny names, and we'd lie in parks while she pointed out constellations I never knew existed. For the first time, my life wasn't just orderly. It was alive. She made me feel seen. "There's an adventurer in you, Liam," she'd whisper. "You just need to let him out." And God, I believed her. About 6 months in, she laid out her grand plan, her dream. She wanted to move to the coast, to a city with a big art scene, and open her own gallery. And not just any gallery, a high-concept space for new avant-garde artists. The way she talked about it with so much passion made it feel more real than my own life. "And I want you to do it with me," she said, her eyes shining. "We'll be partners. You'll handle the business, the logistics, all the things you're brilliant at. I'll be the creative force. Together we'll be unstoppable." It was the most terrifying and thrilling thing I had ever heard. It meant leaving my job, my city, my entire life. My logical mind was screaming at me. My friends were skeptical. "You're going to quit your career for this?" my best friend Mark asked, his voice full of concern. "You barely know her, man." But my heart, which had been quiet for so long, was roaring. Isabella's belief in me had become my own. I saw the future she painted. Us, side by side, building something beautiful. So I did it. I walked into my boss's office, gave my 4 weeks' notice, and emptied my savings account. Every penny went into a joint account for the business. I was all in. The first month after we moved was a hopeful blur. We found a promising, if run-down, space and signed the lease. I spent my days covered in dust and paint, managing contractors and drafting business plans. I poured everything I knew into making her vision a reality. She was the architect. I was the engineer. She promised her family's contribution to the seed money was just tied up in some boring estate bureaucracy and would be wired any day. In the meantime, we lived off my savings. It was my money that paid the deposit, the rent, the contractors, and all our bills. I didn't mind. I was investing in us. But as the weeks dragged on, things started to feel off. The family money was always just another week away. A new signature needed, a lawyer on vacation. The excuses were always plausible, always delivered with a reassuring smile. Isabella started taking investor meetings by herself. "They're stuffy old art patrons, darling," she'd say, kissing my cheek. "You'd be bored to tears. Let me handle it." I, the supposed business partner, was left waiting at home. The we in our project slowly became I. My role shifted from partner to project manager, then to something like an assistant. I tried to ignore the knot in my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the red flags were getting impossible to ignore. She got secretive with her phone. She started dressing up for her meetings, coming home late smelling of expensive perfume and wine I knew we couldn't afford. When I tried to talk to her about our dwindling money, she'd get defensive. "Don't you trust me, Liam? You have to be patient." She made my real concerns feel like a personal attack. The end came on a rainy Tuesday. I came back to our apartment, soaked and exhausted after paying a plumber with the last few $100s on my credit card. I just wanted to have a real, honest conversation. I opened the door, and I knew. The air felt different. I heard a man's deep laugh from the living room. I walked in and saw her on the sofa, curled up against a man in a suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He had his arm draped around her, and they were sharing a glass of champagne. They both looked up. For a split second, I saw panic in Isabella's eyes. Then it was replaced by a chilling coldness. It was the look you give a waiter who brought the wrong order. "Liam," she said, her voice flat. She didn't even get up. The man in the suit just smirked, looking me up and down. "So this is the helper," he said. Helper. The word just hung there, confirming everything I was afraid of. I wasn't her partner. I was the help. "What is this, Izzy?" I whispered. She finally stood up. "It's what it looks like," she said without a trace of guilt. "Liam, let's not be dramatic. This was fun, but it was never going to be a real partnership. I needed someone to get things off the ground, and you were available." Every word hit me like a punch. Available, fun. She talked about my sacrifice, my love, my life savings, like it was a temporary convenience. "The money, Isabella. My money." She sighed, annoyed. "Oh, consider it a severance package. The gallery is fully funded now. Richard," she gestured to the man, "is my real partner. He understands my vision." That's when I saw the eviction notice on the counter, placed where I couldn't miss it. The lease was in my name, a final cruel twist. I had 30 days to get out. The business we were meant to build was hers. The home we shared wasn't mine. The woman I gave up everything for was a stranger. "You need to go," she said, her voice hard. "Richard and I have plans." I just stood there, paralyzed. I looked at her, searching for any flicker of the woman I fell in love with. There was nothing. I turned without another word, walked to the door, and as I stepped out, she slammed it shut behind me. That sound was the final, brutal punctuation on my complete and utter ruin. The first few nights are a blur. I couldn't be still. A hotel room felt like a coffin, so I just walked. I walked through the unfamiliar streets of this city that was supposed to be my new home, a city that now just mocked me. I walked until my feet were blistered, the physical pain a welcome distraction from the agony in my chest. I had a few $100 left on a credit card and a car that was almost out of gas. The shame was a physical weight. I couldn't bring myself to call Mark or my family. What would I even say? Hey, you were right. I was a fool, and now I have nothing. The thought of their pity was unbearable, so I just disappeared. I slept in my car for a week, parking in 24-hour supermarket lots, waking up at every sound, my neck stiff and my body cold. I ate off dollar menus and nursed a single coffee for hours in fast food joints just to stay warm. One morning I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror and had no idea who I was looking at. My eyes were hollow. I had a patchy, unkempt beard. I was the cliché of a broken man. This was rock bottom. I had walked away from a stable life for a mirage. Isabella hadn't just taken my money, she'd taken my self-respect. But hunger and cold are powerful motivators. Swallowing what was left of my pride, I started looking for any work I could find. My resume was useless. I was overqualified for menial jobs and had no local references for anything else. Finally, a temp agency found me a series of gigs. One day I was hauling crates in a warehouse. The next I was scrubbing floors in an office building after dark. The most consistent job was as a dishwasher in a chaotic Italian restaurant. I'd stand for 10 hours, my hands raw from hot water and detergent, scraping other people's leftover feasts into the trash. In those moments, I'd think of my old quiet office, and the contrast was so absurd, I'd have to bite my cheek to keep from either screaming or laughing.